I like how Kaylin shouted that she's calm. Nothing says you're calm like shouting it. Okay, so here's our big slide. Today is Thursday the 17th. As you can see, we have our new vocabulary for our new unit. We are officially done with ecology. That doesn't mean that, we're never going to go back to ecology. It just means that we're moving on to our next unit. Your objective has to do with natural selection, which we'll get to in a little bit. The essential questions are there, key points are there, all about natural selection. Your CK through 12, like I said, just like yesterday, we're in a new unit. We're dealing with evolution, so those are your evolutionary readings for the week. Hopefully at this point you've gotten at least some of them done. Since we're not having our weekly quizzes anymore, what I'm doing is I'm spinning in some of those CK through 12 questions onto your exit tickets. So that's how that's going to be reflected. But okay, let's go ahead and dig into it. So our do now, answer in the chat box. In your own words, give your best scientific definition for evolution. Be prepared to defend your statement when I call on you. You'll notice that I have included some pictures down here. None of them are really about, monkeys or anything like that. So evolution is kind of a broad term. How you interpret it is what I'm looking for. What do you think evolution is? Okay, so here we go. 5 minutes. Okay. You can do it now, Gina. Thank you, Casey. Afternoon, Robert. Thank you, Eddie. Thank you, Josiah. Thank you, Kaylin. Thank you, Hugo. Ooh, very thoroughbred. I like it. I'd appreciate that, Casey.
I can tell you what evolution is.
Okay, wait till the timer's done.
Yeah.
Thank you, Denise. Thank you, Zaria. I'm very impressed. You guys are doing pretty well. Thank you, Alan. Ooh, good job, Clint. Thank you, Jacob. Thank you, Grace. Good job. Very thorough, Casey. I like it. Thank you, Dina. You sure did, Hugo. Thank you, Eileen. I like the use of vocabulary. Ooh, very nice, Brian. Simple. That's true, Zaria. The animals have to be insulted to the point of being triggered. Okay, so Brandon, you said you had something you wanted to say?
Yes.
Go for it.
Now, what I know about evolution is that it can be defined as a process of growth and development, or the theory that organisms have grown and developed from past organisms. Like an example of evolution can be how cell phones have changed over time.
Very good, thank you. So what Brandon just showed us is that evolution is not strictly a biological concept, right? Evolution applies to whatever. Does anybody else want to come off mute and say what their definition was for evolution?
I'll do it.
Go for it.
I said evolution is the change in an organism or object, and it's over time it changes by form and shape.
Very good. Excellent, Denise. Thank you so much. Yeah, you guys are pretty much getting it, right? Evolution is a very broad concept, and essentially it's dealing with change over time. As you can see in these images that I put here, the one on the left is a train system. I think it happens to be a city in China. So what happened was initially it was very small, and then over time it changed and grew to encompass more surface area and go further places. The image in the middle is actually the evolution of the economy. So it's kind of simplified, but it's showing you how back in the caveman times they were trading food for services, and then as you go forward, you see currency start to develop, and then currency now goes digital at the very end with like computers and cell phones, how everything is almost cashless. So it's not just looking at fossils and seeing how that becomes people. Certainly, that is a big part of it, especially for biology, but it's not. It's not only that. It's a lot more than just that. Ooh, Faye, let's see what you got. I think evolution is the process of change in people, animals, plants, things, or in places, kind of like adapting to a specific climate or environment. Oh, excellent, Faye. Thank you so much. That's a big part of what we're dealing with when we're talking about natural selection, which is going to be our big topic for today. So let's move to our objective. Oh, actually, no, I wanted to put the definition. So in case nobody said it, I went ahead and put it here, but a lot of you clued in on this being the main definition for evolution. Very simply, evolution is change over time. It's not something that is, super controversial. I don't know why it's so controversial, but essentially this is all it is. Something changing over time. Now, when we're talking about it in an evolutionary context, you can see this image, how feathers developed from like a little spine. Over time, that spine kind of specialized and adapted to its environment to become a big broad feather. And of course, there are lots of different types of feathers. There are some feathers that help birds fly. There are some feathers that are for protection. And some plumage, which is a fancy word for feathers, is also used in what's called sexual selection, which is like, to attract a mate. So you would have heard like peacocking, right? The peacock has that really pretty feathers and they move around in a certain kind of pattern trying to attract a mate. Anyway, so feathers serve different purposes depending on their environment. So just like Faye and a bunch of other people were saying, it's an adaptation. So very good. Okay, so our objective. Can I get somebody to read the objective for me?
Uh, yeah, I'll do it.
Okay, go for it.
Students will be able to describe and illustrate how natural selection produces change in populations, not individuals, over time.
Thank you. So that is something that I wanted to point out from some of the responses that I saw. It's important to know that evolution is a long process, right? It's not something that happens immediately. It's something that happens over a long period of time. So that if it's happening over a long period of time, it's not happening to individuals, it's happening to populations. So there are certain traits that are advantageous that help animals procreate, produce more offspring, which are better adapted to survive that environment, so on and so forth. So it is not happening to individuals, but rather populations over time. And we'll talk more about this today and tomorrow. Okay, so the reason I'm excited is because we're going to watch part of this episode of Cosmos. Now, if you've never seen Cosmos, it's one of the greatest shows ever made. I will put a big asterisk, though. The guy that did it is Neil deGrasse Tyson, and he's recently gotten in trouble for some things that may or may not be true. It's hard to know. But know that I'm showing it to you purely out of its scientific, the way it presents knowledge, I think, is really important. And the way that it shows evolution, I think, is so easy. It just makes it so fluid and so fun. I like it a lot. Now, aside from his own, trouble stuff, he also has an agenda. So he is a very kind of liberal scientist. What that means is that he is very anti-religion. Initially, I said that, thank you, Casey. I'm showing it for the educational purpose, not because of him. My thoughts about Neil deGrasse Tyson are, so-so, because he does have a big anti-religion bend. And like I said at the beginning of the year, I think that it's totally doable to balance those two worlds. It is not my job to discredit religion or to say that whatever you believe is not true, right? Your beliefs are your beliefs, and then whatever science is what the science is. Those two worlds are both separate, and they can also be, held within you. You don't have to necessarily pick one. You can believe in both things. Anyway, so like I said, my job is not to challenge you in that way. If you do feel challenged that way, I am glad, because the only way that you can make sure that you believe in something is to have that belief challenged. But know that that's not my intention. I'm not trying to convert you or anything. So I want to watch this because I like it. I like the way it presents stuff. So let's see if it'll work. I've not shown a video this long before. It's about 15 minutes. So I wanted to address what Casey just said. So she said, wait, so dogs are secretly wolves and then people just took them and opened a PetSmart? That's essentially what happened. But again, evolution is that slow change over time. So all dogs, from the Chihuahua to, the Golden Retriever, any dog that you can think of, is a direct descendant of wolves. So wild wolves that just existed out there.
But what about a German Shepherd? Can a German Shepherd almost look like a wolf?
Same thing. Every dog species, there is no dog species that is not directly related to the wolf. But that shows you the power of genetics, not just evolution, but all these things. Like if you look into a dog's DNA, you will find out that it's 99.9% wolf. Like that 0.1% is where you get all those different variations. So when Neil deGrasse Tyson is saying that we picked the dogs we thought were cutest, so we picked the ones that had the genes that we liked, then those genes got copied and amplified to become what they are today.
Mr. Raymond,
repeatedly.
Why is the brown bear in the Arctic?
So that's what happened. Originally, there were no white bears at all. Like all the polar bears were actually brown bears. And what happened was there was a mutation that gave rise to a white fur coat that was advantageous, like we saw here with these two bears, right? The brown bear was much more easily seen against the white snow as opposed to the polar bear or these white fur bears, which gave them a slight advantage, which was able to help them to get food. So over time, the white bears are going to have a lot better time getting food as opposed to the brown bears, which means that they're not going to survive and they're going to die off. So all the genes in that population become white fur coat.
Okay.
You're going to have to live in suspense because that's where we're going to stop. But I hope you understand why I wanted to show that to you. I think it's really, really cool, and it does a great job of showing exactly how evolution by natural selection happens. So the two examples that he gave were one, the dogs, and two, polar bears, right? Does anybody think they can explain natural selection through dogs?
Like, what do you mean by natural selection?
So how did natural selection play a role in how dogs came from wolves?
Crossbreeding into wolves.
Was that Grace?
No, I mean.
Like like it means both agreed that natural selection favored wolves that were bold and friendly. They also agreed that bold and aggressive wolves will be killed and therefore unable to breed. Oh, sorry, my bad. This allowed the bold and the friendly dogs to breed, which was a key to eventually no evolution into dogs.
Okay, yeah, very good. Who was speaking before Brandon?
That was Aileen.
Eileen.
Eileen, thank you so much. That was the word I was looking for, was breeding. So natural selection is actually guided by nature, right? That's why it's called natural. Breeding is artificial selection. So I want to make sure that I clarified that. It's artificial because it's not guided by nature, right? Breeders are the ones who do that. So whenever you want a certain type of dog, like let's say that my wife really loves corgis. She thinks that corgis are like the cutest dogs ever. And they are. But you wouldn't go out, just to nature to find a corgi. You have to go to a breeder, somebody who specifically breeds those dogs, right? They're looking for that certain genetic trait that they can then pass on to other generations. So thank you. Can someone then explain natural selection with the polar bears?
I can.
Go for it.
So, basically, there was a mutation which caused one of the polar bears' fur to get white, but the white polar bear had an advantage; they could find their food easier. So then the black polar bear started to die off, and then all of the polar bears became white.
Very good. Thank you, Grace. So as you can see that it was an adaptation to the environment, right? So the bear didn't necessarily like want to adapt to the environment, right? It wasn't like it had a desire to change its genes. You can't wish your genes to be something different than they are. What happened was exactly what Grace said. There was a mutation. Something happened inside that original brown bear's eggs, a mutation that was beneficial. So what happened was normally we would do cells first before evolution, but your cells are constantly dividing all the time. Like for me, I have a really bad habit of like picking my nails, right? Whenever you pick your nails, all that skin comes off, that dead skin. So what happens is your body has to grow new skin, right? In order to do that, your body has to divide more cells. And what happens is sometimes when it's dividing the cells, it'll make mistakes. That's where you can get stuff like cancer, is because there's been these mistakes on a genetic level. Not always, but it's not uncommon for it to happen. So what happened is the bear's egg cell had a mutation. So this is a skin cell, right? The egg cells are what's going to give rise to a new animal. And so those are the ones that are going to be passed down. So let's say, for example, that you have skin cancer because you are out in the sun too long. That's a mutation that you got from the sun, right? That's going to be hurting your skin cells. That's not a cell that you pass down. Those are called somatic cells. The cells that get passed down are called gametic cells or gametes. We'll talk more about this when we get to genetics and to cells and all that. So don't feel like if you don't know it now, you'll never know it. We'll talk more about it later. But just understand that it's not all cells that pass down mutations. It's just the ones that make new babies. So your sperm and egg cells. Okay? So, like I said, I hope you enjoyed that. I like that Cosmos series a lot. He goes into talking about taxonomy, which I wish I would have shown earlier, but we'll get to it eventually.
Do we have
All right.
a do we have an independent practice?
Yes. So we've gotten our feet wet with what it is about evolution and natural selection and all this stuff. So I wanted you to take some time to read about it and to answer some questions. So there is an independent practice already uploaded into your assignments. The reading is, I guess maybe depending on how much you read, I think it's very short, but some people might think it's kind of long. So it's a couple paragraphs and there's like 6 questions after it. So I'm going to give you about 20 minutes. If you don't finish it, then of course this is for homework. But I hope that you were able to read it relatively quickly and answer the questions. And then after that, we're going to head right into our exit ticket. So like I said, it was kind of a chill day, right? Instead of me talking about natural selection for 30 minutes, I thought I would show you that video. I think it's a lot more fun personally. And I agree with some of the all that were saying that it's kind of like a bedtime story, right? Like whenever you're in school, it's so easy to think about there being divisions between, history and geography and English and science.
Mr. Raymond, can we do the questions on the piece of paper?
Yes, that's fine. And so I hope what this video is showing you is that there's kind of like a blending, right? So when we're talking about evolution, this is spiraling like history events and geography and biology, and it's all kind of merging together. As you get older and you start to study more, you'll see that the divisions between your courses are kind of arbitrary, like they're not really there. We kind of create those boundaries, so it makes it easier to learn. But as you get older and as you learn more, you'll see that there is a lot more turnover, a lot more crossover between subjects. But okay, so I'm going to give you about 20 minutes. Actually, I guess a little bit less, so we have time for exit ticket. You have about 15 minutes to read through that, answer those questions. And here we go. I'll send it to you, Grace.
Can I write the answer in a piece of paper and then they take a picture of it and
Of
send
course.
it? Okay.
Yeah, if I couldn't hear Alan or Brandon earlier, it's totally fine if you just want to take a picture. I don't know if you can edit it because it's a PDF, but for sure just write down the answers into the assignment and then turn that back in. Or take a picture of a piece of paper. Or turn in a Google Doc, however you want to do it. Totally up to you. Okay, Grace, you should see it. That's okay. You can do that, Nor.